All right. Oh, all right. So Vas and Shane, thank you guys so much for being here on our ClearAngel Live this week. So we decided to, um, we really wanted to do something on Clubhouse because we had gotten a lot of questions during onboardings around, different social networks. And I think a lot of people were debating, where they should be spending their social credits. So Alicia was our first ClearAngel Live, and she talked to us a lot about just sort of like the general landscape. We talked a little bit about Clubhouse, and there was definitely a lot of confusion. A lot of people had heard about it. A lot of people, wish they were invited. We had some people on Android. About 95% of our users are on iPhone. So we've invited some folks in, and we thought it was a really good opportunity for you to, as our resident Clubhouse experts here at Clearco, to enlighten us. So why don't you just take a minute and sort of talk about what you do at Clearco, and how you found Clubhouse, and then how you kind of found each other on Clubhouse. So Vas, let's start with you. Then Shane, you go ahead, and then maybe Vas, tell us a story about how you and Shane kind of teamed up on Clubhouse.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been at Clearco for the past year and a half or so. I started off actually beforehand as a founder myself. I had my own businesses, and I was always very intrigued what was happening at Clearco, just because of the entire mission by founders for founders, and how we're able to really support, entrepreneurs in a way that's very different than like traditional banks or equity investors. So I was instantly drew in by the mission, and I decided, how can I be on the other side now, being able to have these successful businesses, but also how can I now support other founders who are like in the same shoes as me to help them scale their brands. So I joined and as a investment analyst, and then through the year and a half, been able to expand across our different international markets. So I did Australia. I helped our SaaS product as well, now back in North America, helping e-com businesses. And it's been incredible just to see how much we've been able to support, not just on the capital side, but really helping businesses scale strategically. And one of the ways that I actually was able to learn how to help businesses scale even more strategically was actually through Clubhouse. I first heard of it, I want to say last summer. It was all over Twitter. It was such an exclusive group. And for those who don't know what Clubhouse is, it's essentially an app. It's voice only, invite only, where you just have live conversations. And on D2C Twitter and in the startup Twitter side of things, everyone was talking about how great conversations and one-on-one conversations you can have with people that you don't really have access to. So I was like, this is a really great growth hack. If I go on here, I can figure out other ways that businesses are working, best practices, and how I can just elevate my own self from it. So I got an invite from the app in November. And since then, I got instantly hooked, listening to all different types of rooms and conversations on how people are scaling D2C, how they're using Facebook, how they're using TikTok, so many different topics at hand. And I instantly got hooked. And then it ended up being that I was in a bunch of e-commerce rooms that I discovered that Shane was on it as well. And we were both, finding other incredible founders. You're like, great, like you have a lot of great strategies at hand, but how can you fund that? How can you continue to just push the envelope to just make the most out of all these efforts? And so actually through Clubhouse, we've been able to fund a great amount of really awesome founders, and just build a really great network around it too. So that's how Shane and I actually joined forces, and we created an entire club called the e-commerce gurus. And we can talk about that part a little bit later on as well. But that gives a little insight of myself on Clearco, how I got into Clubhouse, and how Shane and I have been able to grow one of the largest clubs on Clubhouse focused on e-commerce.
That's so cool. Yeah, Shane, you took, like, I remember you called me in, like, was it December or something like that? And you had like what was it? How did you sort of
we drove 7 million in gross market value, or gross merchandise volume rather, overnight, which is like not the norm. And I was like, oh wow, this is a really powerful tool. Like what can you do with this?
So how did it get on your radar, and why was it something that you got that intuition that this is something that you're going to spend your time on?
Yeah, and like I'm honestly like I'm a person who likes to work smart. Like I think the reason that attracted me to Clubhouse so much is like I actually like could get like a ton of like companies that I could help, and like a ton of like deals that I could work on with like just like by like just having a conversation. Like I could get 50, 1,000 people inboxing me at one time. On the platform. So like that's what drew me to it. I mean, like growing up, I was like a power seller on eBay. Like as a kid, I built it to like 60,000 in sales. And in university, I had a software company. So like I've always been entrepreneurial, and I've always liked to like play around with like new technology. Like when like BitClout came out, like all these new things come out. I'm usually like pretty early to adopt. So when I got on this platform, like I noticed like the caliber of people were like really high. Like it was a lot of really cool investors, a lot of really cool entrepreneurs. I got a lot of magic was happening on the app. Um, like I know that there's been like VCs who have sourced $1 million deals on the app, and reverse people have found like angels and VCs. People have been starting companies together on this app, and like a lot of magic was happening. So when I joined, it was just by happenstance. I joined like pretty early in like November, which was like not that long ago, but for Clubhouse life world, it's early. Like a lot of the people who blew up in the app are people who I started on the app with, who like had like 500, like didn't have a lot of followers, but because I became buddies with them and they became friends with me, we kind of just like went on the app like together. We did rooms together, and like as the trajectory of the app grew, like our following would grow. So like I eventually discovered Vass was on the app, and obviously like now me and Vass are like best friends. But we would like do rooms, me and Vass and like all these other people, and like even in like December, like we were in a room once that had 5,000 people. Like every time I spoke, like 400 people would message me. And we could help a ton of these people gain access to capital. A lot of them didn't know what ClearBank was. So like, I was like, wow, this is really powerful. So that's kind of like the value that it brought. That's kind of like what attracted me to it, to be honest. Like working smart, I'm mandated by ClearBank to find and invest in the best e-commerce companies I can. If they're all here and congregating here anyways, I may as well become big on this app and let them come to me. So that was the reasoning behind it. Now it's kind of taken on like a life of its own. Like the friendships that I made on the app are like incredible. Like some of the opportunities that I'm working on, like some really cool stuff. But yeah, just like meeting people who have similar values but are from different places on this earth. A lot of beautiful things can happen. Like that's the app. It's just like essentially these voice chat rooms on different subjects. It's really quite a simple concept when you think about it. But that's kind of the opportunity. That's what attracted me to it was the ability to connect with so many people by just talking. Like I love to talk, so it was a pretty clear fit. And it's worked out really well. And it's not just for business; you can talk about anything. But yeah, that's kind of what it is.
So I think like when I first, so I'm like, to date myself, I remember being around when Twitter launched, back in the day at South by Southwest. And it was pretty clear back then too that like there was definitely something special about this, but there was no commerce. There was very little business being done on Twitter in the early days. It was really just kind of like a forum on steroids, a lot of just like, people talking to each other. People were meeting each other. But it wasn't obvious. Whereas now I think because social media has come so far, immediately you can start to find ways to use these technologies to actually, accomplish a mission, not just, go, chat with somebody. So Shane, I'm going to pick on you. Clubhouse is notorious for its notifications. Probably get 70 or 80 notifications a day, it seems, from Clubhouse. You're on all the time. Like I literally see I see your face coming in, or your name popping up on my phone all the time. And for me and a lot of people I've spoken to, it can be seen as a very productive distraction, where you feel like you're getting things done on the platform because you're gaining value, you're listening, but at the same time, it could also just be encompassing, and you could spend a lot of time on there and not actually gain value. So put yourself in the shoes. You're an e-commerce founder, and you've got like first of all, like how much of a budget would you give somebody from a time perspective, or is that even the wrong mental model to use? Like, if you're a founder operating your business, how would you build a discipline or a habit around Clubhouse, and how much time a day do you think you have to invest in that in order to get something back? Or am I thinking about it the wrong way? Is that not the right way to use Clubhouse?
Yeah. Okay, I have a few thoughts on that. That's a good question. So first up, I'll say it's social media, right? And like you can get addicted to social media and you can have diminishing returns. And if you want me to be honest, like Ken, like the past month, like I have scaled back a lot on Clubhouse. And it's funny. Like I've honestly probably created enough work from my work just from Clubhouse to not be on the app, but still work on deals and opportunities from Clubhouse dating back 3 months ago. So like, I guess, yes, I found at the beginning, it was really, really, really good to like be hyper networked and know like we're like, me and Vas are really good friends with like the top guy at Deloitte Digital, which is the largest e-commerce consulting practice in the world. We met Justin Can, the guy who started Twitch. Like we're meeting really cool people. So a part of that was like alluring to me, to be honest.
Is that there's that addiction of, it's almost
Yeah, like it,
celebrity,
being
like,
really well networked has a lot of benefits, like
right.
a lot, and those opportunities have presented themselves to me, to be honest. Like a lot of cool stuff, like I can't talk about right now, but like a lot of cool things will come your way when like you know someone who also knows someone, and then you have this idea, like, so like that's why I kept going on, because I found value from doing it, and I was still like in terms of like my job was like, it was helping me like succeed in my job. Like we had a deal come through to Clubhouse just from an introduction that was like a million, like a massive thing that we funded in like a day and a half. So like for me, like I didn't start seeing diminishing returns until recently, which is why I scaled back. If I'm an e-commerce founder, I think you have to lay out what the value you want to get from it is and make sure you're getting it. And if it's not, you stop. Like if it's to network with like investors, that'll be easy on an app like this. If it's to learn more about supply chain, like whatever it is, if this is your goals, you should write them down. And if you don't see yourself progressing towards them, or you see diminishing returns, scale it down. I mean, I guess it's what you make of it. It's funny right now, the app is actually going on a downward trajectory in terms of downloads, but they're opening up Android, like
Right.
which is going to probably reverse that, and that's like the big thing they're working towards. So I don't know what the future of it is. Maybe it's the next Vine, the biggest thing that failed. But
Right.
I know Twitter offered them a $4 billion offer and they turned it down.
Right.
And a lot of smart people are invested in Clubhouse, some of the best investors in the world, and they seem to be able to have this crystal ball to predict the future. And when you're early on, an early adopter on that growth, good things happen. And I just wanted to be a part of it. I saw what happened with Slack. I saw what happened with Twitter.
So Vas, like I sort of look at it. So, Shane's saying, you have to, like, you want to have a goal. So let's take supply chain, something we talk a lot about with our founders. Really complicated, um, really complicated space, and very niche to, your industry, whether you're, selling a physical good, whether you're importing, whether you're doing retail, whether you're making your own product, very, very, very different stuff. So is it safe to say, like, when I started using Clubhouse, I saw it almost as the reason why I like podcasts, which is, father of two, pandemic, I, cook and clean and do a bunch of stuff around the house, and I can listen to information while I do that. So I volunteer to do chores because I get to, listen to cool information. And I sort of saw Clubhouse in my head as, oh, this is like an audio blog post. This is like a, so instead of me carving out time in a week to like read a blog post, I can basically drop in on this interactive blog post. And, sometimes I would walk away learning a lot. Sometimes I'd walk away being like, quite frankly, that was a waste of 35 minutes. But is that the right mental model? Like when you're, so put networking aside, because I think we'll talk about that in a bit. When you're going in from like a learning perspective, like, do you recommend founders go in and actually try to learn, or is it really more of that networking paradigm where the conversation is kind of just there? It's really about, oh, that person said something cool, I'm going to message them and I'm going to build a relationship with them, regardless of like Like, do you actually, like, okay, sorry, I'll finish with this. I hear people say like, oh, I'm taking notes. And I'm like, you're not taking notes. Who is sitting here on Clubhouse taking notes? Um, like to me, so anyway, Vas, like, can you kind of comment on, again, is that the right mental model? Is it more for learning? Is it more for making connections? How do you sort of see that? Or how would you advise, your founders who are on the e-commerce side?
Yeah, I think the short answer is definitely what you make of it, because literally you can make any room at any point. And if you want to be educational, you can make it educational. If you want to make it networking, you can make it networking. If you just want to literally just make a musical and have it played, like you can make that happen too. They've had musicals on Clubhouse.
Yeah,
So
I saw that. Yes.
it's really what you make out of it. And the note taking is actually interesting because people actually sell the notes. They say like go to this website, you can pay amount and actually have the notes gathered to as well. Like, and there's been online Slack groups that have been made. There's been other like domains that have been linked so that you can just continue to get the information. So there is a domain where you can learn from Clubhouse. The most important thing is like it's how you make out of that room, because sometimes you can spend 3 hours in one room and the moderators are just talking between themselves, making it more about how they want to build their persona onto the app versus it actually be giving back like information. And then other rooms can be like 30 minutes long, but it's completely to an agenda and you're learning and gaining so much value. And the Q&A process is actually filtered in a way where there's value the entire time. So it's, for me, I find that it's figuring out who are those best moderators and who you are actively following. If you're just going through the runway, which is basically like the home feed, and you're just joining random rooms and there's like a million people on stage, there's a very high chance like you're not going to get your answer question. You're going to waste a lot of time, or it's just not going to be a really productive call. I've actually found that the most educated room that I've ever been have always been the small and intimate rooms. Like when there's like 20 people or less in it, everyone always wants the big 5K rooms and like thousands of people listening in. But those ones, like it's very difficult to actually get something out of it, unless it's actually something of like a specific club that focuses on supply chain. Like there's supply chain clubs, there's fulfillment clubs, there's clubs that have dedicated times every single day of every single Wednesday at this specific time is going to be focusing on this kind of problem, and the title of the room is specific to that. And then this other day it's going to be all about a pitch room, and like it's only going to be 30-second pitches and such. So it's knowing how to navigate those kinds of real concrete value added clubs versus the noise, which again kind of comes back to the sense of like, it's always, when it's social media, it's very easy to be distracted, but once you actually find some good ones, you can start following them and following their networks as well.
So something that I think took me a long time to learn on when it comes to social is this idea of, a mindset of, are you a consumer or are you a producer? And I think that you quickly, I mean, because of the community that you've built, obviously now you're almost even, you're in a meta layer where you're like a curator, or you're a, actually, no, let's call you more of a producer, and then other people would be like the makers, and you're actually now corralling makers together and adding another layer of information to that kind of network, which is really cool. But I know a lot of founders struggle with imposter syndrome, and so I'll throw this one to you, Shane. So if you're running an e-commerce store, chances are, you actually know things that other people don't. Like most people don't start e-commerce stores. It's hard to imagine that because it feels like everybody is, but the truth is, to get to a point where you're actually making some kind of money is pretty difficult, and you tend to have information that other people don't have. And, if you take, I'm sure Clubhouse follows the same YouTube, 95-5 rule, where 5% of people create, 95% of people consume. Like, if you're that founder, should you be building a creator mindset into Clubhouse, where you're trying to create rooms, you're trying to educate, you're trying to, build those kind of communities? Or not like that the ship has already sailed, but like, Or is it better to sort of go in with a real kind of consumer mindset, and then like you were saying, start to follow people, build those relationships and kind of see where it goes? Or do you think there is a tack to have a strategy where you can actually go in and say, like for example, you sell some specific niche, just go and try to carve out that niche in Clubhouse and actually attract customers? Or again, am I thinking about that the wrong way? How would you advise a founder on that?
Yeah, so I don't think you can apply the 95 and 5 YouTube model to it, because like even like think about it, like if you have something to say and you have value to add, you just raise your hand and you speak. So like it's much more of a conversation, like it's much more of a give and take. I think there are people who just consume, and that's still probably the majority. I just don't think it's 95 and 5. I think that it's more of a level playing field. Because it's funny, like I was once in a room where they were talking about like politics, and they were talking like um they were talking about this, like Kennedy, the President Kennedy, and how he got assassinated, and a person raised their hand and it was Robert Kennedy the third, like his. Yeah, so like you never know who's in the audience, and that's the cool part. Like anyone can be in the room, like, and listening. Like I've been in rooms that I've seen like Mark Andreessen join, and so like sometimes you're talking about something, like the person who invented the concept
Yeah.
joins.
I've had that experience. I've been in a lot of these, like, so I'm like a software geek, and I've been in some of these tech rooms, and then all of a sudden someone will pop up on stage and be like, "Hi, I'm actually the person who built this, and no, actually, you're using it totally wrong, or that's not my intention." And you're like, "Wow, this person," like those kind of like moments are like can only happen on Clubhouse. But do you think that it's even going back to the idea of like raising your hand and answering questions, like there seems to be an etiquette on Clubhouse, and you can kind of tell when people are, just, basically the equivalent of spamming, right? And just sort of like asking a question and pitching their.
So like I think you have to know what your goals are. If your goals as a founder are to learn as much as you can about supply chain, find the best people who know their stuff, and don't just listen to people. Like maybe do a little bit of background check to make sure this person's not clout chasing. There are real communities with real experts, like really famous people.
You define like, because
People who just want followers and will just talk out, out of their behind in order to make you think that they are credible individuals, because they want followers, they want clout.
Okay, so so how do you, because again, this is me being I go into some of these rooms, and I've been around, and I'm listening to some of these people talk, and I'm like, this is just not correct. This is, or at least it's so surface fluff that in my head I'm like, okay, so maybe this is what people want, is this surface fluff, or is this person kind of a grifter and not really adding any value, and just like, and then again, compare that to what you guys have built in the e-commerce gurus. I've listened to some, and they're great. Like, you're asking real questions. It's essentially it's a live podcast. It's like it's a live show versus an album, where you're bringing people up on stage and you're asking great questions. But Vas, like, let's say you want to learn about a new topic, like let's pick on supply chain, because I think that's such a hard thing to actually become a master in. What are those things you look for as you're going through the runway, or as you're joining rooms, and you're just like, oh boy, like how do you, like, what's your heuristic for, or how do you tune your bullshit meter when you get into a room and realize, okay, no, this is going to be a waste of my time? Is it tonality? Is it, do you go look up the person talking and do you back channel them while you're listening? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, there's a few different things. I do try at first, just like if there is a specific room title that just really speaks to me about, like for this example, supply chain, that just really articulates the pain point, like I'll join it in, I'll give it maybe like 2 to 3 minutes of my time. And then while I'm like trying to decipher, is this a good room? Like, are the moderators, are the people on stage, are they of worth? So what's the only thing you can actually read on this app is people's bios. So a lot of people go really ham into their bios and they make them very detailed, they make them very specific, and you can link to your Twitter and to your Instagram. So I usually always like I scope out everyone's moderator bio to understand what they do, like what are some of their credentials and why they are the ones speaking about this subject matter, while also just getting a feel like, are they just talking about themselves? Are they just every 5 seconds asking for people to follow the club and follow them? And are they actually inviting people on stage to actually answer questions? Because they can say whatever they want in their own circle, but if they're not going to be opening the stage so that they can actually share the value, then like that's also like a red flag. But from there, like after checking Instagram and seeing like if their Instagram also correlates to them just being the expert, then I'll by that point I should have a good feel or not. It's not rocket science to know when they are bullshitting or not, so to say. But if there is at any point where you actually even just want to challenge it, like I always like just raise your hand and then see if they're going to be able to answer. And I've seen it multiple times where people actually call the moderators out when they aren't correct or where they are giving a fluffy answer, because it allows for that two-way conversation to happen, and it's something that I actually think is better than just having to hear anyone just speak their mind without someone actually giving some feedback.
That's actually a really good point. I hadn't thought about this, but going back to the blog post, I sort of stopped reading a lot of the kind of growth marketing blogosphere ages ago, because my whole joke is there's actually like 8 real blog posts that were written like 7 years ago, and then everything else is just a retelling or a rehashing of those 8 core kind of principles. And look, there's always value in adding your take on it, but you're right, where the power of Clubhouse is, and as long as you're polite about it, you can just say, hey, that hasn't been my experience. Like I've actually seen it, talking about supply chain, you could say, yeah, I've actually seen the exact opposite thing of what you just said. And if the person is an honest broker, they might be curious and actually invite you to share your experience. Or if they sort of try to silence you or kind of push you off, then you're right. You probably know that maybe this person is just trying to,
Yeah,
promote something
exactly.
or followers.
And another funny note on that too that you mentioned is like, even if there's someone in the audience who doesn't have the access to say it on stage, but they message the moderators, sometimes it happens even to us. They're like, oh no, I have a different perspective on this. Like they'll message us on Instagram or Twitter and say, can you bring me up on stage so I can bring a different perspective to this, because this is actually like not the only way to do it, which is actually like the best part of it, because it's not just one siloed opinion. We can actually have a lot of different voices.
That's interesting. So Shane, you're very good at, like, I've seen you in these rooms where, and I sort of shadow lurked you for a while, because you were going into rooms with speakers that I also follow and I like on Clubhouse. And a couple of times I'd hear you get on stage. Like, so let's say you're in, so I like this idea, Vas, you were saying, pick rooms that have smaller, like you've had really good luck with like really intimate, smaller audiences, where you can actually have good conversations. Shane, I've seen you in these like mega, like, and Vas, I know you, obviously you are too, but like, I'm just picking on Shane because I literally see his name. I used to see it like 70 times a day on my phone. So do you have strategy? So let's say you're in one of these rooms and, you've raised your hand, you want to get on stage and you're just not getting on stage. Are there any hacks for getting on stage? Like Vas said, like I never thought about back channeling them on Instagram during the live Clubhouse. I mean, that's a really good idea. I haven't done that, but do you have any hacks for that?
Well, it's hard when you first join, but I think if you have credibility, like going into it, like it's easier. Like for me, like it was good for me at the beginning to be on those like massive stages with 1,000 and 2,000 people, because then I could like not steal, but like get those followers and bring them into the e-commerce gurus network. We're like, I'm like, we bring real, like really cool people on like really successful people who aren't even on Clubhouse onto that platform. So like that was the reason I would go into those rooms. It wasn't to clout chase, but it was to build a following so that I could do with it. I could own my own destiny on the platform instead of having to rely on other people to get people to join my rooms. Like now I know I can set a room and I'll get at least a few hundred people to join it.
Right.
There's
It's
like
really yeah, and I think there's something to be said about like it's there's a lot of power in that. Like I look back on my kind of wasted opportunity on like take Twitter for example. Like if you can build those audiences organically over time, knowing that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, like you're being real and you're adding value. Yeah, like you said, you can now actually command, it doesn't sound like a lot getting 200 people to just join a room, but that's a lot of people, and that's only going to continue to grow, right? So I guess like quickly, like to talk about, we'll put a link to e-commerce gurus in the resource page here when we post this. But like, what what are you trying to build, Vas, with e-commerce gurus? Like when somebody joins this community you're building, you have to figure if Clubhouse stays around, this is essentially going to be the equivalent of I'll use podcasts as kind of the best analogy, where you're going to have this community of people who are going to be, when they meet you on the street, they're going to feel like they know you because they've been listening to you speak on Clubhouse for years. So what do you hope people feel when they join that community? What are you hoping to, what kind of experiences are you trying to share? Is it more informational? Is it more just a way for founders to blow off steam? Like, what's kind of the vision of e-commerce gurus?
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting because I don't think when Shane and I first met, we were like, let's just create this group so we can just have the best and brightest minds around e-commerce just be in one spot.
mention the SEO thing that we did by accident with having the first word as
Yeah.
I'm taking this, it's Vas's question, but quickly, we accidentally, by having the word e-commerce, overtook the other clubs because the other one was called Club CPG and the other one was called Commerce Club. And by having the first word as e-commerce, it put us at the top of the algorithm. Go on, Vas, but that was a huge growth hack.
Yeah, and a lot of the things that we did at first, because it was still very new, like creating clubs, like there was still a very long line, and we were like, let's just make this club and just make it focus on e-commerce, and we just want the best and brightest minds in one room. And it had this evolution where literally like the biggest brains behind e-commerce were getting into these chats, and we're like and started to actually take the initiative to want to host like weekly conversations on specific topics. Like Shane mentioned that we had one of the head of Deloitte's digital's firm or whatever sector it was. He wanted to talk all about how brands can really focus on the B2C sides of their business, or how they can transition to multi-million-dollar businesses from like small startups. And every Tuesdays he would have conversations and bring on really key experts. And then we had another incredible expert who really wanted to help founders really perfect their pitch. And these kinds of relationships came naturally because we just made this ecom grow title and attracted some really bright people, where we were just having conversations at first, just talking about like growth hacks, like how to get funded without diluting, anything and anything possible around e-commerce. We just made a topic of conversation, and then from that feedback we just kept getting more people interested to just to whether they're first time founder, don't have a business, or actually like the guru behind e-commerce, they were all coming to this one room to have these ideas being like shared, and these really great practices. So it was definitely more on the educational side, how people can grow from here versus anything else. And it's obviously has resonated quite a lot.
So Shane, like, what do you, so if I'm a, even, so if I'm just starting, or if I'm a mid-level e-commerce founder, what, by subscribing to e-commerce gurus, like, what am I going to get every week? Like, why should I give you an hour of my time, every week? Like, what do you hope they walk away with?
Yeah, I think you should subscribe so you can see what events we're having, and then you can pick the ones that are most relevant to you. So like I saw Cynthia ask the question in the chat, like, how do you know like if it's if Clubhouse is the right channel for you? Like, I think it relates back, like at least with e-commerce gurus, like we usually do a founder spotlight. Like we do one with like founders who are at 5 figures, 6 figures, 7, all the way to 10 and 11 figures, like create like really big companies. And we just ask some questions, we have a conversation, and then people in the audience come and ask questions. Like, I think you can derive a lot of meaning from that because you can ask the questions that pertain to you and get like an individualized response. If you want to ask the guy who built Klaviyo about email marketing, like now's your chance kind of thing. Like one of the people we do rooms with is this guy Chase Diamond. I think he's literally ranked the #1 email marketer on the planet Earth. Like the amount he knows, like it's crazy. Like you can hear it from the horse's mouth. And if it's a room that isn't relevant to you, just don't join. You can totally pick. And it's not just with e-commerce gurus. Like the other ones I named, Commerce Club and Club CPG, they're run by friends of mine, and they have really good shows too. So like, I think just find your tribe, like find the people who aren't like BSers, you know, try to stay away from like the 1,000 person rooms about manifesting your reality. I would say, my personal opinion.
Try to lot of that on Clubhouse.
Yeah, you know, like there's opportunists everywhere. There's scammers everywhere, and there's people trying to do good.
Yeah, a lot of multi-level marketing. I feel like there must be conversations at Clubhouse right now where there's like, okay, how can we, if we could just get the multi-level marketers, and like, because I do think that there is a lot of that kind of tarnishing, you know, some what are real legitimate conversations going on. I love those hacks you gave on, they're not even hacks, they're just kind of like that advanced common sense on, like, join the room, listen for a few minutes, see if people are actually getting brought up on stage. Are they plugging their product or their channel every 2 minutes? And it's almost like, is it sort of safe to say it's kind of like a, you know, back when we weren't all in our houses, when you're at like a party or, and you just start mingling.
Yeah.
Sort of say, oh gosh, this is not a conversation I want to be in.
You can kind of tell, like, if
yeah, you just kind of like, it's like this human, you just sort of start to like move yourself over to a different conversation. So, okay, a couple of things. I'm gonna let you guys go because I know you guys have busy days. So number one, Shane, you said show. You referred to what, and you just sort of casually said, oh yeah, like, you know, just don't watch that show.
Yeah.
It's funny how, you know, your like the mental model in your head is that you're gonna like choose to watch Netflix, or you're gonna choose to maybe go on Clubhouse. Like, is that an active choice in your head? Is that how you see Clubhouse evolving, where like regular programming, and you're going to decide one night, instead of watching, you know, the next season of Ozark, you're going to go sit on Clubhouse for 40 minutes? And it's like, it's a choice between Netflix and Clubhouse. Like, is that sort of how you see it?
Yeah, so I, like, first off, I love Clubhouse because I can learn and do other stuff at the same time because it's on the audio. I can work out and listen to a show, and the reason I call it a show is because first, like, that's like the term that like Clubhouse uses, and that's what it is. Like, there's like every Monday at 8 p.m. there's rap battle poetry. I don't know what you would call it except for a show. It's so entertaining. And yeah, like, you can choose to watch Game of Thrones, or you could choose to learn about e-commerce, or watch or listen to a live rap battle, or listen to a live reenactment of Lion King. Like, there's so many cool things to do on this app. It's a lot of fun. The only difference is, though, I like it is because I can do those things and I can also work out at the same time, or make dinner.
Go for a walk, or
go for a walk. Or I can put it on the speakers and I can listen to it with a friend or something, you know. Like, it's a little bit easier, like, you know.
So Vass, what do you think's going to happen? So, okay, Twitter has Spaces. You know, Facebook's launching their version of Clubhouse. Everybody, LinkedIn is going to do it. Everybody is going to just, it's essentially like what Snapchat did with stories. You know, hey, here's a new paradigm for sharing information. Everybody copies it. Snapchat's still doing fine, but they're not like, they're not where they could have been had nobody else copied that, right? So what do you think is going to happen? So fast forward, now we're in September, October. Hopefully, you know, the world is more vaccinated. A lot of people have thought that another of the reason why Clubhouse's popularity is rising is because we're all just cooped up in our houses and are craving social interaction. So fast forward to a world now where Twitter has successfully launched Twitter Spaces. Facebook has launched whatever. Maybe people still think they're going to buy Clubhouse, so maybe they just buy them. But now there's like 3 or 4 of these places. What do you think is the, like, in your crystal ball, what are you betting on just this idea of an audio community being something you want to invest in? Obviously, you have a following on Clubhouse that I'm sure you could port to other places if you wanted to. Where do you think in 6 months your audio home is going to be? Is it on Clubhouse? Is it going to be on a different app? Is this going to go the way of Vine, where great idea? Truthfully, I mean, just as a quick little, Vine was my, like, I was, that was my spirit social network. You know, I invested way more time than I wanted to in Vine and was literally in tears when they shut it down. Where do you think that's going in 6 months, Vaz?
Yeah, I can totally echo that with Vine as well. I hate to be the pessimist behind this with Clubhouse, but I can echo also what Shane was saying. Like he hasn't been on it that much actively as well. I haven't touched it that much as well, because I think that it comes in waves. Sometimes with Clubhouse, you have to, unless you are hosting a specific room, it's so easy to get distracted. And I felt myself that I was getting really distracted unless I was hosting those specific rooms for e-commerce brewers. So unless you have that kind of like diligence and that kind of capacity, just tell yourself, okay, I'm only going to go on here for 1 hour. And even Shane and I, we even made the commitment now, like for all our rooms that we host, and we say like it's going to be an hour. If we're going to push it out, it's going to be an hour and a half, and then that's it, because that's also when the rooms just start losing its values as well. Right. So we really want to be time cognitive of that as well. And for the future of Clubhouse, if I look at the what would you call it, the glass ball? I think I remember the crystal ball. That's what it was.
Crystal ball.
Yeah, like if we look into the crystal ball, unless like Clubhouse starts integrating more of like community sent outside of audio, it's going to be really hard for people to stay hooked and to stay connected, because their biggest strength of it being audio only is also their biggest weakness, because everyone connects off of Clubhouse. We connect off of Instagram, we connect off of Twitter, and then we go on to Zoom calls together for more longer one-on-one conversations. So
you do see this progression where you meet on Clubhouse, you communicate on Instagram or Twitter, and then you'll actually have a Zoom with some folks.
Yep.
Interesting.
That's where the value really is, taking them off the platform, getting them like I'm in 3 different WhatsApp groups. One of them has 150 people, one of them has 8 people, and one of them has 200 people. And that's not even the Instagram ones I'm in. So people are curating communities. There's Facebook groups. I have friends now that like I literally FaceTime every day. Like, I think that's the model. Find your tribe and take them off the app. You know, that's what that you close.
Right. So then, Vast, to your point though, if they don't find a way to keep you there, there's this chance that just by you'll that's really interesting. Like I mean,
like it's a funnel at this point, and I think Facebook has the best chances, because once Facebook groups can convert to audio rooms, like the community is already there, everyone can continue the conversation on the groups. So my biggest bet is probably with Facebook. Twitter is doing a good job too, but obviously with groups on Facebook, it's the best market fit, I think.
Interesting. So yeah, Shane, rapid fire here. If you had to, you've got 1,000 Bitcoin to bet on Twitter Spaces, Facebook, or Clubhouse in the next 6 months. Who's going to be winning in 6 months? Obviously, LinkedIn is not going to be Who do you think is going to
Clubhouse?
Oh, actually,
I would make movers advantage.
Okay. How about you, Vass?
Actually, I would point out someone different, because I actually saw this notification yesterday, and it's Spotify. So Spotify actually has a really cool opportunity, because we're talking all about the business side of things and like entrepreneurship and stuff, but there's a huge space on Clubhouse that's all music. It's all celebrities, like singers, actresses that are on that app. And just yesterday, when I went on Spotify, I got a form, like quick feedback form saying, what kind of live streams would you like to see? Do you want to see live shows? Do you want to see interviews with your famous celebrities? Even podcast hosts? Like, it's a natural progression for all the podcast people who are already on Spotify to have that live communication. So I think Spotify also has a really good opportunity to take advantage of that there as well. And I don't think they're very commonly in the conversation.
Oh, that's such a good point. I think people forget how they're quietly massing, like really their whole bet is audio. That's their entire business. And now looking at the strides they've made into video, yeah, no, that's a really good, that's actually a really good point. Well, look, I won't keep you any longer. I think this has been really good, rich information. And I guess, yeah, I'll give you each a final 1 minute word here to say anything you want, and knowing that this will be seen by the angel community here, living on forever in the resource center. So obviously we'll put a link. We'll make some notes from all the good tips you had. Anything else you want to impart on this generation of ClearAngel founders?
Yeah, like you mentioned at the beginning, imposter syndrome. I'll posit that that doesn't exist. There's no fake it till you make it. Just be it until you become it. If you want to be a creator on this platform, start doing it. If you want to be the next 10-figure e-commerce founder, it's follow those people who've actually done it and talk to them. They'll help you. They want to give you value for free. That is what the model is this free. So just don't be intimidated, and like you know, just be it, and you'll become it.
That's awesome. Vas, I'll give you the final word.
Yeah, for sure. I think that for everyone who's watching this, then like being the ClearAngel community, that's already like you're in the right place to just take your business and just your own personal self to the next level. I really much live by the mantra that the master has failed more times than the beginner has tried. And in this kind of community, you can try so many different things and take these expert advice, but just the inspiration from everyone else to really become masters of your own craft. And like Shane was saying, like you can totally be it. You can be the next 7-figure, 8-figure exit if that's a goal, or at the same time just build it to a point where you just are really proud of the achievement and the legacy that you're having with your own company and your own kind of personal development. So I hope that everyone has been able to get a lot of value out of it. And I'm just excited to see how ClearAngel is going to continue to grow further and help even more founders.
Well, hey, you both inspire me, and I learn a lot from you directly and indirectly, and it's great having you here. And we're gonna have to have you back on when when Facebook launches their thing. Like we'll kind of let the dust settle. So maybe later in the year we'll bring you back on for a V2 to even just hear how your how your behaviors have changed. Is e-commerce gurus still exclusively on Clubhouse? Maybe they've made you an offer you can't refuse to stay on Clubhouse. Maybe you've satellited it out to other platforms. Yeah, it'll be interesting to do that. So thank you both so much for your time, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye everybody.